You'll be fine going to the hospital alone, right? I froze. My name is Erin, and I'm currently 34 years old, 9 months pregnant with my first child. This is all so new to me. Between the anxiety, the excitement, and the constant discomfort, it's been a whirlwind. But more than anything, I feel grateful to be bringing a new life into the world. That should be enough, right? My husband, Colin, works in finance and has weekends off. But that doesn't mean he's ever around. Every Friday evening, like clockwork, he drives an hour north to spend the weekend with his parents in their countryside home. It's not for any specific reason, just a vague sense of obligation. They've always been a close-knit family, and since their place is close, he goes often, even now when I need him the most. Since I got pregnant, I've had to be extra careful. I avoid lifting anything too heavy. Even simple grocery runs have become tricky. Thankfully, I have a few kind neighbors who sometimes help out when they see me struggling with things like bags of dog food or cases of water. A typical day for me starts early. I make breakfast for Colin and see him off to work. Then I clean the apartment, do the laundry, run any errands, and prep for dinner. Only after everything is in order do I get a moment to sit down and catch my breath. Being on maternity leave has given me more free time, and I've found a small joy in blogging. Every day I write a short diary post and upload a few photos, meals I've cooked, the view from our balcony, spring blossoms in the park. I never thought anyone would care, but the comments I get from strangers and friends alike make me feel seen, like I'm not so alone in this. One evening, I was preparing dinner, baked salmon with lemon and rosemary. Colin walked through the door, dropped his jacket and briefcase right onto the couch, and walked straight past me without a word. "Welcome home," I said softly. "Dinner will be ready soon." "I'm taking a shower," he replied without looking at me. 3 years of marriage, and I could probably count the number of warm moments between us on one hand. Lately, I find myself wondering, is this really how love is supposed to feel? When he came back out in pajamas, I handed him a glass of iced tea. "Where's the beer?" he asked, nodding toward the empty spot on the kitchen counter. "Oh, I forgot to pick some up. I'll grab it tomorrow." "You forgot? Go get it now." I blinked. "Colin, it's almost 9 p.m. I'm exhausted. You could just..." "No," he snapped. "You forgot it. Pregnant or not, you don't get a free pass. My mom says staying active is important for the baby anyway." Knowing it was useless to argue when he got like this, I threw on a jacket and walked to the corner store, my back aching with every step. That's when I ran into Monica, our upstairs neighbor. "Hey Erin. Late night errand?" she asked cheerfully. "Yeah," I said with a tired smile. "Forgot the sacred beer." We both laughed a little, but her warm voice gave me more comfort than she could have known. In that moment, I realized how lonely I'd become, how isolated I felt even in my own home. As I walked back, carrying the six-pack like it weighed 100 pounds, one thought kept echoing in my mind. Something has to change. Beer. And he told me to go get it. Monica raised an eyebrow. Why didn't he just go himself? That's exactly what I said. I laughed softly, though it wasn't funny. Didn't get through to him. She gave me a look that said you deserve better, but all she said was, sounds like you're going through a lot. We walked together until we reached the corner where our paths split. Her warmth lingered with me even after she disappeared into her building. When I got home, Colin was exactly where I expected, sprawled on the couch, the TV blasting. He hadn't touched the dirty dishes, hadn't put away the leftovers, hadn't done a thing. "What took you so long?" he grunted without looking at me. "Were you wandering around aimlessly? Give me the beer." His words stung. They always did. Still, I didn't reply. I just placed the six-pack beside him, then went to clean up the mess from dinner. My lower back throbbed. The baby had been pressing on my bladder all day, and all I wanted was rest. How could he say things like that? Especially now, when I was literally carrying our child. I wanted to shout, to cry, to scream that I wasn't his servant, but I stayed quiet. I didn't have the energy for another pointless argument. After clearing the table and wiping down the counter, I had a quick bite alone, then took a long bath and slipped into bed. The sound of the TV buzzed in the background, echoing through the apartment like static in my brain. The next morning, Colin acted like nothing happened. He was in the kitchen, humming while scrolling through his phone. I, on the other hand, couldn't stop replaying his words in my head. "Why are you making that face so early?" he said as he poured himself a cup of coffee. "Don't take your mood out on me. I'm heading to work, try to be a little considerate, yeah? You know the importance of appreciation." The nerve. I nearly laughed. Appreciation? For what? Ignoring me? The urge to fire back was strong. "That applies to you, doesn't it?" But all I managed was a long sigh. He grabbed his keys and left with a rushed, "Be careful, all right? And I want something good for dinner tonight. See you." After he left, I got back to my routine: laundry, sweeping, picking up groceries. Since he had mentioned a company dinner, I figured I'd take it easy and just prepare something light for myself that evening. But just as I sat down at the table, chopsticks in hand, I heard the sound of keys at the door. "I'm back," he called out. I stood up, surprised. "Oh, welcome home. I thought you had dinner plans." "They canceled last minute." "I'm starving." "What's for dinner?" I hesitated. "Well, I only made a meal for myself." Colin's expression soured immediately. "Are you serious? You didn't think I might come back hungry?" Unbelievable. He stormed into the kitchen and stared down at the small plate of food I had prepared. His lip curled. "This? You call this a meal? I honestly wonder what you do all day. I work to support this household and you can't even manage dinner?" I bit my lip, trying to keep it together. "I'll make something now, just don't get upset. You should ask my mom for lessons or something. Your cooking has never been that great. It's honestly disappointing." That hurt. He always did this, compared me to his mother like I was some substandard replica. "I can't eat this," he said flatly, pushing the plate away. "Go buy something." "It's late," I whispered. "I've already bathed, and I'm tired." "Can't you?" "Forget it," he snapped. "First the beer, now this? You don't take anything seriously. You're so frustrating." As he walked away in disgust, all I could do was sit there, hands trembling, the baby pressing against my ribs, and wonder. What exactly am I holding onto anymore? I'm going back to my parents' place. And with that, Colin stormed out, slamming the door so hard the apartment walls seemed to vibrate. For a moment, I just stood there, frozen. Then, strangely, a wave of relief washed over me. The silence that followed his departure wasn't heavy, it was comforting. Peaceful, even. The next morning, just as I expected, my phone rang. The screen flashed Mrs. Hartley, Colin's mother. "How could you not serve Colin a proper meal?" she began without so much as a greeting. "Do you have any idea how that looks? This feels like moral harassment, if not worse." I tried to explain what had happened, that he told me he wouldn't be home, that I had prepared a meal for myself, but she wouldn't listen. Her voice rose in sharp, accusing tones. Finally, I apologized just to end the call. After hanging up, I sat at the kitchen table, numb. It didn't matter what I said, I was always the problem in their eyes. Still, with the house to myself, I tried to salvage the day. I had a late brunch, some scrambled eggs, fruit, and a slice of toast, something I could actually enjoy without someone criticizing it. But the looming thought of Colin coming back that night put a damper on everything. I decided I'd make an effort, one last push. Maybe if I went out of my way to prepare something special, he'd remember there was a person trying her best in front of him. I took my time at the grocery store, choosing fresh vegetables, marinated steak, and even his favorite Belgian beer. I was determined to put together a dinner that might actually earn some appreciation. Back home, I cut short my usual blog update, just a quick post about the sky turning to soft orange at dusk. Then I got to work in the kitchen. Hours passed as I cooked, seasoned, plated. The dining table looked beautiful by the end, like something from a magazine. Candles lit. Napkins folded. Steak resting on fine china. I stood back and looked at everything with pride. He'll have to be satisfied with this. So I waited. And waited. An hour passed. Then another. My phone remained silent. I called once, then twice. Nothing. My heart began to pound with worry. Did he go to his parents' place again? I called them. No, they hadn't seen him. By 11:30 p.m., panic began creeping in. I hovered over the number for the local police. Was he in an accident? Is he okay? And then, just before midnight, the door creaked open. Colin stumbled inside, reeking of alcohol. I'm home. Hick. I rushed to the door. Colin. Are you okay? What happened? He slurred, too loud. Go away. He shoved past me and collapsed onto the floor of the hallway. I bent down to help him, but he batted my hands away. Don't touch me, he snapped. Don't come near me with that ugly face. I can't believe you're my wife. The words hit me like a slap. I froze. In his drunken haze, he crawled to the edge of the dining room, took one look at the beautifully set table, and just laid down. Right there. I stared in disbelief. All that effort. All that care. And those were the words I received in return. Tears stung my eyes as I quietly sat down at the table and ate alone. Every bite tasted like ash. I felt invisible, erased, utterly alone. The next morning, Colin rubbed his head and groaned. Ugh. My head is killing me. I must have drunk way too much last night. Then he looked at me, confused. But why did you leave me on the floor? You chose to lie down in the hallway, Colin. That wasn't my fault, I said quietly. He groaned, holding his head. Aren't you my wife? You're supposed to take care of me when I'm drunk. His words hung in the air like smoke. Why is it always my fault? No matter what the situation, somehow I ended up being the one to blame. If you weren't going to eat at home, you could have at least let me know, I said, trying to keep my voice even. I made a full dinner, Colin. I called you, multiple times. Why didn't you answer? My drinking party from the day before got pushed to last night, he said, shrugging like it meant nothing. Do I have to report everything to you? And you know how hard it is to check your phone during those things. Think about my situation, Aaron. With every sentence that left his mouth, I felt my heart grow colder. Expectations faded. Hope thinned. Maybe if I stopped expecting anything at all, I wouldn't feel this endless sting of disappointment. I think I need a break, I murmured. I'm going back to my parents' place tomorrow. He barely looked up. Why? Because being around you lately feels unpleasant. Boring. I don't feel seen, Colin. Divorce. The word had started to drift into my mind more often, quiet but persistent. I hadn't spoken it aloud yet, but the more he treated me like an afterthought, the closer it came to the surface. The only thing grounding me was the baby. The little kicks, the steady growth, the way my whole world would change once they arrived. Friends had warned me about labor pains, but my anticipation outweighed the fear. Neighbors would pass me on the street and smile, saying, just a little while longer, and those words gave me strength. A few days later, Colin came home from work with a rare bit of enthusiasm. Hey, I've got an idea. Let's go on a family trip. I blinked. Really? Yeah. My mom and dad want to come too. The words sank like stones in my chest. A trip? With his parents? Now? The tension between his family and me was no secret. When something went wrong, they never hesitated to point fingers, at me. Just like his mother had, scolding me on the phone like a child. I don't think that's a good idea, I said slowly. My due date is next week. Traveling might be risky. How many times do I have to tell you, he snapped. Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you're sick. My parents are being thoughtful, and everything's already planned. 2 nights, 3 days. We're going next week. I stared at him. Next week is my due date. Just do what you're told, Aaron. Prepare. End of discussion. He walked out of the room before I could say another word. Am I in trouble now? I thought. The next day, I called my close friend Jess and told her everything. She was immediately concerned. That's too much, she said. You shouldn't be traveling that close to your due date. I was still debating how to back out when the morning of the trip arrived. I'm not feeling well today, I said. I'm worried about the baby. I think I should rest. Colin frowned. You can rest in the car. Come on, grab the bags. We're heading to my parents' house. Reluctantly, I followed him, nerves twisting in my stomach. As I slid into the passenger seat, I suddenly felt a strange warmth at my feet. I looked down. Water. Spreading. Oh my God. Colin, I said, my voice shaking. I think my water just broke. We need to get to the hospital. Now. Colin's eyes widened. He froze. What? Now, Colin. Are you serious? Colin exclaimed, staring at me like I had just ruined his vacation plans. Yes, I'm serious. I cried. My water broke, we need to get to the hospital now. The baby might be coming. In the chaos, I tried grabbing a towel from the back seat to clean up the spreading water, my hands trembling. But before I could steady myself, Colin abruptly flung open the passenger door. Colin, what are you doing? I asked, heart pounding. We need to go to the hospital. Get out, he said coldly. You're going to make a mess in the car. I blinked in disbelief. What are you saying? I said get out, he barked. I just got this car detailed. I need to clean it. I can't have you ruining the upholstery. Then, without hesitation, he yanked open my seatbelt and physically pulled me out of the car. I can't believe this, he muttered, running a hand through his hair. We were supposed to be on a family trip. Just go to the hospital by yourself. I stood on the curb, stunned, barely able to comprehend what had just happened. Wait. Colin. I shouted. How can you leave me like this? But he had already gotten back in the car, slammed the door, and driven off, leaving me standing alone, clutching my swollen belly, in the middle of the neighborhood street. Overwhelmed, I reached for my phone and dialed for an ambulance, struggling to stay calm. Just then, I heard a voice from behind me. Aaron? Are you okay? It was Monica, my upstairs neighbor. Her eyes widened in concern the moment she saw me. Oh my God, you're in labor. I nodded, too choked up to speak. Without a second thought, Monica rushed into action. Forget waiting for an ambulance. I know a cab service that handles emergencies like this, I'll call them now. She wrapped her arm around my shoulders and led me gently to the curb. You're not alone, Aaron. I've got you. Tears welled in my eyes. Her kindness cut through the panic like sunlight breaking through clouds. Thanks to Monica's quick thinking, we arrived at the hospital in less than 20 minutes. On the way, she held my hand, cracked jokes to distract me, and kept reminding me to breathe. At the hospital, she stayed with me until the nurses brought me to a labor room. Just before I was wheeled away, she gave my hand one last reassuring squeeze. You've got this, she whispered. You're going to be an amazing mom. She even contacted my parents, who arrived soon after, their faces etched with worry and love. Monica pulled them aside and whispered something I couldn't hear, and the three of them disappeared from the room as the contractions grew stronger. My phone buzzed from the side table. I barely had the strength to look at it. Who is it? I asked weakly. My mom glanced at the screen, her face tightening. It's Colin. I sighed. I'll take it. I answered. Hello? Aaron, Colin said, panicked. Help me. I hung up immediately. I couldn't deal with him. Not now. Not when I was about to bring life into the world without his help. My parents turned off my phone and stayed close. The pain grew worse, but I focused on what mattered, my baby. After what felt like hours, I finally heard a tiny cry, a sound that changed everything. I had done it. Exhausted, I saw my parents and Monica smiling at me from the doorway as the nurse swaddled the baby. Relief and warmth rushed through me. I closed my eyes and let sleep take over. When I woke up hours later, my mom was sitting beside me, gently stroking my hair. Are you okay, sweetheart? She asked. I'm okay, I whispered. My dad, eyes glistening, held my hand as my mom said softly, the postpartum period is tough. Just rest. I smiled through the exhaustion. Then I looked around. Where's Monica? She left a little while ago, my mom said. I stared at the door, thinking of how different things could have been without her. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly grateful, and ready to fight for the life I deserved. Lying in that hospital bed, wrapped in warmth and peace, I made a promise to my parents. Once I was discharged, I would visit Monica and properly thank her for everything she had done. After they stepped out for a moment, I turned on my phone to update my friends about the birth. But as soon as the screen lit up, I froze. Dozens, no, nearly 100, missed calls. All from Colin. For a brief second, my heart paused. But instead of hope or concern, I felt nothing. No expectation. No desire to return his calls. I simply closed the notification window without hesitation. Later that afternoon, one of my close friends, Jade, came by the hospital room with a small bouquet of sunflowers. Her smile lit up the room. Aaron, you did it. Congratulations. We hugged, and she cooed over the baby before sitting down beside me. Eventually, as we sipped on lukewarm tea from paper cups, I found myself sharing what had happened with Colin, the car, the trip, him abandoning me. Jade's face turned red. He did what? She said, half standing. I know, I said softly. It was awful. I swear, if I had 5 minutes alone with him, she muttered, then shook her head. But right now, you need to focus on resting and healing. Everything else can wait. Her presence lifted my spirits. After chatting a while longer, she hugged me tightly and promised to visit again soon. Not long after, my parents returned to the room. Having already been filled in by Monica, they were quiet, but I could feel the storm of worry beneath the surface. What are you thinking about doing? My mom asked gently. I looked down at my hands, then back at her. I'm considering divorce. They exchanged glances, but didn't look surprised. My dad nodded solemnly, and my mom placed a hand over mine. We support whatever decision brings you peace, she said. They had already prepared a room for me at their home. Once discharged, I would stay with them, just me and the baby, surrounded by calm, not chaos. Apparently, Colin had tried to come to the hospital, but I had already notified the nurses that I didn't want to see him. He wasn't allowed in. The next morning, Monica showed up at the hospital with a large fruit basket and a radiant smile. Monica. I lit up at the sight of her. You came. You're looking better already, she said, placing the basket down beside the bed. But remember, not to overdo it. Postpartum fatigue is no joke. I smiled, comforted by her calm voice. Thank you. For everything. I really don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been there. She waved a hand modestly. The important thing is that you and the baby are safe. That's all that matters. I still owe you a proper thank you. Once things settle, I'll visit. She chuckled. I'll be waiting. Then, Her expression shifted slightly. I told my husband what happened, and let's just say he wasn't pleased. Her tone carried a quiet firmness I hadn't heard before. And for the first time, I realized just how deep Monica's presence in this neighborhood really went. Monica was married to Mr. Adams, the CEO of the company where Colin worked. When we first moved here, I had no idea. She and I had bumped into each other at the local bakery, the small florist on Main Street, and slowly, we started having tea together, swapping stories about books and gardens. Colin, however, had never even joined me on those walks. Never met the neighbors. Never cared to know who was part of our community. And now, he had no idea just how much trouble he'd walked himself into. And for once, I wasn't afraid. I felt protected. Empowered. And more than anything, ready to begin again. Colin had always kept his distance from the neighbors. Polite nods at best, he didn't care for greetings, never lingered in small talk. That's probably why he had no idea who Monica really was, despite seeing her a dozen times in our building. Months ago, Monica had once told me gently, "I'd prefer not to cause any waves, so let's keep our friendship just between us for now, all right? Don't mention it to Colin." I had respected that. I knew she was trying to protect me in her own quiet way. But as my pregnancy progressed and Colin's behavior grew more unreasonable, Monica had offered more than once, "Should I speak to my husband about this?" Each time, I'd refused. I didn't want to bring trouble to her door. But after what happened that day in the car, how he pulled me out and left me there while I was in labor, something must have shifted in her. Perhaps even Monica had reached her limit. That's probably why Colin had been calling her too. Desperately trying to do damage control. I turned to her and said sincerely, "Monica, I honestly can't thank you enough." She looked at me with soft, serious eyes. "Aaron, you're a dear friend. I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. Not when you were going through something like this." Her words hit me hard. My eyes welled up. I tried to hold back the tears, but one slipped down my cheek. Monica gave me that warm smile of hers and squeezed my hand. Our conversation was filled with quiet laughter and relief. But still, Colin's texts and missed calls kept lighting up my screen like static in my peripheral vision. I ignored them all. My mind was clear for the first time in months. All I wanted now was to focus on rebuilding my life, with my baby, and on my own terms. Just before I was discharged, my friend Jade returned, this time holding out her phone to me. "There's something I want you to see," she said, eyes gleaming with both mischief and justice. On the screen was a trending video post. It had exploded on a social media platform that Jade had a massive following on. I stared at the screen, confused. "What is this?" "It's you," Jade said, "and what Colin did to you. Someone happened to be nearby when he kicked you out of the car, and they caught it on video. They blurred your face, don't worry. Then they sent it to me. I shared it with their permission." The video was clear, me, visibly pregnant, standing on the sidewalk as Colin yelled and drove off. Even with my face hidden, the cruelty was unmistakable. "It went viral," she added. "And people figured out who he is. Where he works. Who his parents are." I was stunned. I had no idea it had escalated like this. Jade gave a soft, satisfied smile. "Well, he brought it on himself." Apparently, when one of his friends called to confront him, Colin had tried to excuse himself by saying, "I had a prior family trip. I didn't have a choice." That lie only made things worse. Now, not just Colin, but even his parents were being dragged into it. The story had spread near their neighborhood, and people were openly discussing their family online, especially their years of controlling, judgmental behavior. Suddenly, my phone rang. Colin's mother. Her name flashed across the screen like a warning sign. Jade raised an eyebrow, curious. "What do you think?" she asked. "You gonna answer?" I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I slowly shook my head. "No," I whispered. "They can deal with the consequences now." I've got more important things to focus on. Why don't you just pick up and give her a piece of your mind? Jade asked, eyeing my phone screen, where yet another call from Colin's mother flashed. But honestly, I was past the point of confrontation. I felt no words would change anything now. I simply muted the call and slid the phone into the drawer beside my hospital bed. Soon, the missed calls list became a parade of familiar names: Colin, his father, his mother. Over and over again. Ever since the incident exploded across social media, even the hospital staff had become aware of the situation. But instead of gossip or judgment, they treated me with a level of warmth and empathy that surprised me. Nurses stopped by to check on me more often. One even brought me herbal tea, saying, "You're not alone, Aaron." Colin and his parents continued trying to call, and from what I heard, even showed up at the hospital multiple times. But the front desk had been notified. Under no circumstances were they to be let in or allowed to disturb me. Not even a message. As my discharge date approached, a single worry gnawed at me: what if they were waiting outside? I imagined Colin shouting or his mother causing a scene, demanding the baby, trying to manipulate me one last time. My parents, ever calm, reassured me. "Don't worry," my dad said gently. "You and the baby will be safe." Still, the tension wouldn't leave me. But on the morning of my discharge, everything changed. As I was gathering my things with my parents, I suddenly heard it, Colin's voice echoing from the hospital lobby. "Aaron." Then came the sharp, recognizable tones of his parents, calling out as well. Before I could react, several tall men in black suits appeared at the ward's entrance. They moved with quiet precision, forming a protective circle around me and my parents. "What's going on?" I whispered, stunned. One of the men stepped forward, opened the car door parked just outside the private exit, and said with a calm, respectful tone, "No need to worry, Ms. Aaron. We're here on behalf of Mr. Adams, to ensure you and your child get home safely." Mr. Adams, Monica's husband. The CEO of Colin's company. I turned to my mom, wide-eyed. She smiled knowingly. "Didn't I tell you everything would be okay?" Relief washed over me as I got into the car, the baby nestled securely in my arms. Colin and his parents, overwhelmed and outnumbered, didn't dare approach. Their angry voices were drowned out by the silence inside the vehicle. I couldn't even begin to describe the gratitude I felt toward Monica. She had gone above and beyond. My parents shared the sentiment. "We need to find a way to thank her properly," they both said. Back home, I began a new chapter. Peaceful. Focused. Gentle mornings, soft lullabies, fresh air. I started healing. But the calls didn't stop. I sent Colin the divorce papers, no response. Just more missed calls and endless texts. Then, one day, my father answered the landline. It was Colin's parents. "She married into our family. She should understand how we do things. She doesn't get to complain," his mother said coldly. My father, usually reserved, snapped. "You don't get to mistreat someone's daughter and expect silence in return." The line went dead. After discussing it with my parents, we agreed, it was time for legal help. Coincidentally, my father knew a lawyer from years back, a man named Mr. Crane, quiet, calm, but sharp as a blade. After explaining everything, including the viral video, Mr. Crane agreed to represent me without hesitation. When he first contacted Colin, my husband was shocked. Then, in his usual entitled tone, he said, "We'll settle our marriage ourselves. We don't need lawyers involved." But Mr. Crane remained composed. "I'm representing Aaron. All future communication must go through me." And just like that, the game had changed. The property and child support agreements went through smoothly, and the chaos that had once consumed my life began to settle. Thanks to Monica sharing the full story with her husband, Mr. Adams, the president of the company where Colin worked, swift action followed. Mr. Adams, a man known for his strong family values, made it clear, a man who couldn't respect or protect his own family had no place in leadership. Colin was promptly terminated. Without his job, he couldn't afford his mortgage and had to move back in with his parents. The viral video had stained his reputation, making stable employment nearly impossible. Last I heard, he was scraping by with short-term part-time gigs, drifting between roles without direction. Even his parents weren't spared. Word had spread around their neighborhood, and according to Monica's friends nearby, they lived under a constant cloud of discomfort and gossip. The social consequences, cold shoulders, hushed conversations, were perhaps more devastating than any courtroom ruling. With my health returning and the dust finally settling, my parents, my baby, and I paid a visit to Monica's home to express our gratitude. Monica and her husband welcomed us warmly, both of them doting on the baby with open hearts. From that day on, our families grew close. My mother and Monica became fast friends. My father and Mr. Adams bonded easily over long talks and shared values. And then, something no one expected happened. Monica and Mr. Adams had a son. He was close to my age, kind, thoughtful, and over time, a gentle connection began to blossom between us. A few years later, the idea that I might actually become a part of their family, after all that had happened, felt like a story written by fate itself. Life, as I learned, truly has a way of surprising you. If you've made it this far into my story, I want to say thank you, from the deepest part of my heart. This journey was never one I expected, and it's not something I would wish on anyone. But if my story has moved you, resonated with you, or reminded you of your own strength, I ask that you leave a comment below, not just for me, but for every woman who has ever felt stuck, unseen, or silenced. Your words matter more than you know. Share your thoughts, your encouragement, or simply let me know you're out there. Even a few kind words can remind someone they're not alone. To every woman reading this, please, never ignore that inner voice that tells you something isn't right. Trust it. Hold on to it. I stayed silent for too long, thinking it was easier to endure than to start over. But I promise you, starting over is worth it. You deserve peace, kindness, and love that doesn't come with conditions. No matter how broken things seem, you are never beyond repair. You are never too far gone to choose yourself. And finally, surround yourself with people who don't just show up when things are easy, but stand beside you in the dark. People like Monica. People like my parents. If you haven't found them yet, keep going. You will. If my journey has taught me anything, it's this: strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, I will not be treated this way anymore. Sometimes it simply says, I deserve better. So speak up. Be brave. And if you can, be the Monica in someone else's life. Because one act of kindness can change everything. Let's build a community that does just that, together.